From a social perspective, hearing is one of the most important senses because speech plays a role in the communication that binds society. It allows us to understand events, the difference between a child's cry of hunger and one of pain. Hearing enriches our life by listening to music. In order to hear, the ear collects and amplifies sound waves, and these sound waves are produced by vibrations. The loudness of a sound is determined by the amplitude of the sound wave, in other words, the change in the oscillating occurrences, whereas the pitch of a sound is determined by the frequency or the number of the sound waves. This shows us an image of a low amplitude, a higher amplitude, which is the number of oscillating frequencies, whereas the frequency, the pitch, is the number. So the amplitude is the height or the oscillating frequencies, whereas the pitch is the number of frequencies. There's three divisions of the ear: the outer, the middle, and the inner. The outer ear functions as the receiver. It includes the pinna and the external auditory canal. The pinna gathers the sound and channels it to the external auditory canal, determining sound direction. The external auditory canal, also in the outer ear, leads to the tympanic membrane, which is also known as an eardrum. The tympanic membrane, or the eardrum, is the structure that separates the outer ear from the middle ear. It vibrates at the same frequency as the sound waves and transfers these vibrations to the middle ear. There must be nearly equal pressure on both sides for vibration to properly occur. The auditory tube, or the eustachian tube, connects the middle ear cavity with the throat, and this helps alleviate pressure differences. Most of the time it's closed and flattened. Swallowing or yawning often briefly allows air pressure between the middle ear and outer ear to equalize. That sensation of pressure suddenly equalizing, such as our popping that we receive in an elevator or a plane or scuba diving. The middle ear functions as an amplifier. Sound is amplified approximately 22 times in the middle ear. It consists of an air-filled cavity within the temporal bone of the skull, and it contains three auditory bones: the malleus, the incus, and the stapes. The malleus is going to be attached to the tympanic membrane, or also known as the eardrum. These three bones function as a system of levers to convey this airborne sound waves from the eardrum to the oval window. The middle ear bones convey this airborne sound waves to that oval window, which is a sheet of tissue at the entrance to the inner ear. So the tympanic membrane leads from the outer ear to the middle ear, whereas the oval window leads from the middle ear to the inner ear. The force of the eardrum's vibration, as previously mentioned, is amplified 22 times in the middle ear. This amplification is needed to transfer these vibrations to the fluid-filled cavity of the inner ear. This sound amplification occurs because the eardrum is much larger than that of the oval window, so pressure is concentrated against the oval window, allowing these sound amplification to occur. In the inner ear, this functions as the transmitter. It creates these neural messages in response to pressure waves caused by the sound waves and sends these messages to the brain for interpretation. It contains two sensory organs, the cochlea, which is responsible for hearing, The vestibular canal, or also known as the vestibular apparatus, which monitors body position and movement. The vestibular apparatus or canal is a series of fluid-filled chambers in the inner ear that functions to monitor our body position and movement of head. This is just a breakdown of sound coming in. The pinna gathers the sound, funnels it to the external auditory canal, to the tympanic membrane, or also known as the eardrum, into the malleus, the incus, the stapes of the middle ear, where sound is amplified 22 times. The three bones are connected, act as a lever, so they vibrate, amplifying this pressure waves. And the cochlea is going to convert this pressure waves to neural messages sent to the brain for interpretation. The cochlea, which looks like a snail, has two openings, the oval window and the round window. The oval window, the stapes fits into it. It's one of the three bones of the middle ear. The round window helps relieve pressure created by the oval window. Three longitudinal compartments, each filled with fluid. They have a central compartment, a floor which consists of a basilar membrane which supports the spiral organ. And so this shows the tectorial membrane, the basilar membrane, these hair cells that we will be talking more about as we move along, with the basilar membrane, hair cells that fit into that, the tectorial membrane that overhangs the hair cells. The spiral organ, also known as the spiral organ of Corti, is the structure most responsible for hearing. It consists of the hair cells and that overhanging tectorial membrane. Each hair cell has approximately 100 slender projections. Sequence of events that occur in the inner ear is that the movement of the stapes against the oval window sets up the pressure waves in the fluid of the inner ear. The movements of this fluid cause the basilar membrane to swing up and down. The swinging presses projections on the hair cells against the overlying tectorial membrane. The bending of the hair cells alters the rate at which nerve impulses in the auditory nerve, which is then carries this information to the brain. There's loudness and there's pitch. Loudness, the louder the sound, the more hair cells are going to be stimulated. The more each individual hair cell bends, this is going to increase the number of impulses. So the brain interprets this increased number of impulses as louder sound. Pitch. Sounds of different pitch activate hair cells at different places along this basilar membrane. And so the brain interprets input from different hair cells in different areas as sounds of different pitch. This shows sound waves cause the eardrum to vibrate. We're going back, eardrum, we're in between the outer ear to the middle ear. So the sound waves cause the eardrum to vibrate, and these vibrations are transmitted through the bones of the middle ear to the oval window. And movement of the oval window creates pressure waves in the cochlear fluid, causing the basilar membrane to vibrate. When the basilar membrane vibrates, the hair-like projections on the hair cells are going to begin to swing up and down, touching the tectorial membrane overhanging, resulting in nerve impulses being sent to the brain for interpretation. Types of hearing loss is conductive or sensorial. Conductive involves some type of obstruction along the route that sound follows to the inner ear. It could be wax or other foreign material, it could be thickening of the eardrum, fusion of bones in the middle ear, but that could be corrected with surgery. Sensorineural is caused by damage to either the hair cells or to the nerve supply of the inner ear. This is continually lost throughout life due to aging. It can also be caused by loud music, mumps, rubella, meningitis, certain drugs for treating tuberculosis and cancer. One of the first symptoms is the inability to hear high-pitched frequencies. After age 20, the loss of hair cells causes loss of approximately 1 hertz of our total 20,000 every day. So this is just a typical part of aging. And so this just is a breakdown of the sequence of sound waves. Again, the pinna gathered sound, funnels it to the external auditory canal, to the tympanic membrane, also known as the eardrum. The eardrum vibrates the malleus, which the malleus is attached to the eardrum or tympanic membrane. Stapes attached to the oval window, to the inner ear, to the cochlea. The cochlea is going to convert these pressure waves to neural messages that are sent to the brain for sound interpretation. External ear infections, or infection in the external auditory canal, external ear, often caused by water being trapped in the canal. A favorable environment for bacteria such as swimmers' ears. Middle ear infections usually result when infections of the nose and throat move through the auditory tubes, and more common in children because their auditory tubes or eustachian tubes are horizontal, allowing easier access to bacteria. At least 50% of all children typically have at least one time a middle ear infection. They are more common in children. In adults, the auditory tube or that eustachian tube, it's more curved and tilted downwards, whereas in children, that horizontal allows that bacteria to stay in there, resulting in ear infections. The vestibular apparatus is a fluid-filled maze of chambers and canals within the inner ear, and is responsible for monitoring position of the and movement of the head. The semicircular canals help with balance when we're moving, and the vestibule helps with balance when we are not moving. The semicircular canals consist of 3 canals in each ear and are responsible for dynamic equilibrium. They monitor sudden movements of the head. The ampulla at the base of each canal, each contains a tuft of hair cells embedded in a gelatin-type material called the cupula. Movement of the head causes this fluid within the canals to move, which pushes the cupula and stimulates hair cells, sending messages to the brain. The vestibule consists of 2 fluid-filled cavities. The utricle, which senses forward tilting of the head, and the saccule senses vertical movement of the head. Smell has olfactory receptors, and about 80% of what we think is food flavor comes actually from smell, such as we've experienced this as when we've had a cold that food doesn't taste very good. Olfactory receptors are sensory neurons with long hairs covered by mucus and located in the roof of each nasal cavity. It's one of the few types of neurons known to be replaced during life. They're replaced approximately every 2 months. Odor molecules dissolve in the mucus and bind to the olfactory receptor cells, stimulating them. If a threshold is reached, then the message is carried to the olfactory bulbs in the brain. And the olfactory bulbs process that information and pass it to the limbic system and the cerebral cortex. So this shows the process of smell, the olfactory bulb, odor molecules dissolve in the mucus, olfactory cell send to the olfactory bulb. And recall from chapter 8 that the limbic system is the one that deals with emotions, so smell is the one that most readily brings up emotions. Taste buds are located on the tongue and on the inner surfaces of the mouth and composed of taste cells and supporting cells that are replaced about every 10 days. Each taste bud responds to all 5 basic tastes, but typically more sensitive to 1 or 2 of them than to the others. Taste cells have taste hairs that project into a pore at the tip of the taste bud. These taste hairs have receptors for chemicals found in food. When food molecules are dissolved in the saliva, they enter the pores and stimulate the taste hairs. Although taste cells are not neurons, taste cells generate electrical signals that are sent to sensory neurons wrapped around them. Our taste buds sense 5 basic tastes: sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and umami. That term is derived from the Japanese word meaning delicious. For the taste of sweet, we're prompted to swallow sweet food, indicating a rich source of nutrients. Salt, we're also prompted to swallow this to replenish the salt lost due to perspiration. Sour, the taste of unripe fruit, which might have more nutritional value later on. As fruit ripens, the starch begins to break down to simple sugars. Oranges, lemons, tomatoes, they're rich sources of vitamin C. Bitter, generally we try to reject tastes that are bitter because it may indicate food that's poisonous or spoiled. Umami, typically swallowed, indicating foods high in protein.